Now, if you've been around the channel long enough, you'll know I already did a video similar to this for Gojo. However, now that we finally have a complete picture as to how strong a full power Sukuna would be, I felt like it was finally time for the King of Curses to run through the Chainsaw Man Gauntlet. We're gonna use the exact same rules as last time, taking Sukuna all the way to the beginning of the Chainsaw Man series and having him work his way all the way through to the end, going over in detail every single battle as much as we can and performing as many stat checks to ensure Sukuna makes his way there. I also did a 2-hour stream on this topic a couple days ago, so if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty about how I got into all of my decision making, that's the best place to go. But without wasting any more time, hit that like button and hype button and let's get right into it. So to start off with, Denji's very first enemy in Chainsaw Man is the Zombie Devil. I mean, if we don't count the Tomato Devil. But despite being a giant floating head whose only ability is to bite people and turn them into zombies that can then in turn bite more people to turn them into zombies, not only is it pretty weak, it's also very stationary, and those zombie slaves are about as strong as the ordinary human, which means Ryomen Sukuna, the King of Curses and one of the strongest characters in the entire series of Jujutsu Kaisen, who even in the Shibuya incident at 75% of his power was just absolutely deleting entire buildings and city blocks with his dismantle projectile slashes, is not gonna have a single issue just ripping through every single zombie and the Zombie Devil themselves. Even if the Zombie Devil was to convert like the entire world, I think Sukuna would just rack up an 8 billion person kill count. So moving right along, his next enemies would be the Bat and Leech Devil combo, whether he fights them together or separately. And the truth is, I really don't think they would provide Sukuna a much better challenge either. I mean, sure, the Bat Devil and Leech Devil are definitely way stronger than the Zombie Devil, and if you compare them to Curse Spirits of Jujutsu Kaisen, they actually stack up pretty decently. Maybe not Disaster Curse level, but they are absolutely obliterating multiple buildings to potential city blocks with the Bat Devil's Sonic Boom, the Leech Devil's tendrils just whipping around. But we literally saw Sukuna no diff a character like Jogo, who was supposedly a Disaster Curse level special grade on par with 8 to 9 fingers worth of Sukuna power. No matter how strategic these devils come together or separately, there is just nothing that they'll be able to do to overpower Sukuna, especially when it comes to physicality. The truth is, where most devils are gonna have a chance against Sukuna is if they have some kind of interesting dynamic or power that goes along with their devil form. And of course, the more fear and negative energy surrounding the concept of their devilhood is also gonna mean they have more power based on regeneration. They can come back, they might be more immortal than others. Like for example, you have the Eternity Devil, whose actual whole entire gimmick is the fact that he is not only able to inhabit a specific space and make it an infinite spanning area of rooms, hallways, aquariums, whatever it needs be, the Eternity Devil is also able to endure any and all pain and wounds that it takes during this process. But we literally saw in the original series of Chainsaw Man that Denji was able to create the perpetual motion machine with all of his chainsaw arms and head. And if Denji was able to do that much damage to make the Eternity Devil wuss out and spit them out and just have nothing to do with any of that, I'm going to imagine Sukuna, who can just, as I said before, release entire nets of dismantle slashes, or put his hand down to the Eternity Devil and unleash an Eternity Cobweb to deliver a massive boost of damage all around the place. The Eternity Devil, despite its massive regeneration and immortality factor, is not going to stand a chance. Whether it's a hybrid or a full-on devil, the case might be the same if they aren't some of the strongest characters in Chainsaw Man. Because up next, you have characters like Katana Man, Akane and her Snake Devil, and even if you were to give Akane's Snake Devil the Swallowed Ghost Devil as an add-on, while these characters are a massive leg up compared to the Bat Devil and Leech Devil, to the point that characters like Denji, Power, and Aki all need to go through a massive training arc to compare to these enemies. I mean, you've got Katana Man, who's moving so fast that he is literally perception blitzing characters like Denji. And Akane's Snake Devil appears so fast it blips in and out of reality in the blink of an eye, if not faster. But as Sukuna stands as one of the fastest characters in the entire series, I think that massive speed advantage isn't gonna play a factor when it comes to Sukuna. And since Sukuna is capable of doing much more massive attack damage when it comes to striking strength and just overall destructive capacity with area of effect attacks, no matter how many times Katana Man is able to regenerate, he's easily gonna get sliced into multiple pieces, because his durability is gonna be nowhere near a character like Ishigori Ryu. And while Akane Snake Devil is definitely gonna be stronger than Megami Fushigoro's Orochi, we have already seen what can happen when Sukuna gets swallowed by a giant snake. I really don't even think Sukuna would at all be impressed by any of the enemies that he's faced so far until he gets into the Bomb Devil arc, where he actually fights up against Rize and potentially her partner, the Typhoon Devil. While the Typhoon Devil was definitely a strong beast that was just ripping through multiple city blocks just by running through all of the buildings, and its damage level was obviously comparable to, if not way higher than things like Jogo's Meteor, at the same time, Denji and Beam, once getting through the storm of debris, were able to chop up and piece through the entire baby form of the Typhoon Devil, meaning it's not very durable and is mostly just a chaotic threat. So even if the Typhoon Devil is able to at most damage Sukuna, we also have things like reverse curse technique that are easily going to be able to heal whatever minor injuries that devil is able to do to Sukuna, and considering slash attacks are obviously a bad matchup for the Typhoon Devil, even if it requires a domain expansion to cover the entire area that the Typhoon Devil inhabits, we know Ryomen Sukuna has one of the highest levels of cursed energy in the entire series, more than even double Yuta Okotsu, who is the closest second. It took this man about 3 to 4 domains before he actually had to begin resetting his brain like Gojo in the Clash with the Honored One, meaning one domain expansion, even if we're doing a gauntlet style of battle, is not gonna be an issue for Sukuna to let loose on. And even if we're giving Rize the consideration that she is packing just as much strength as the Typhoon Devil was outwardly presenting, when it still comes down to it, no matter where you put Rize on the stat scale, one of the best ways to describe how a battle with Rize and Sukuna would go would be comparing a character like Rize to a disaster curse like Jogo. For someone that represented nearly half of Sukuna's overall power, this character was incapable of even landing a single hit on Sukuna, and that was with a summoning of a myriad of ember insects, a massive meteor crash landing onto the city that Sukuna admitted probably would have damaged him if it actually was able to hit him, not even including that we just talked about Sukuna can heal. Jogo was igniting the entire city district in lava and just causing so much damage to the overall Shibuya district of Japan that comparing a character like Jogo to Rize, I just don't see Rize being a problem for Sukuna, even if you were to give her the most generous speed, attack, and durability interpretation. And even comparing a hybrid's regeneration to someone like Sukuna, sure, Rize has shown to be able to regenerate her entire head after it blows up, but when just talking about how much stamina Sukuna has, we do not have the same level of stamina feats that Rize would, especially if she doesn't have a full supply of blood to keep that regeneration going. Getting further into the series with International Assassins arc, while I don't think any of the major villains in the first half of the story would actually present a problem for Sukuna, for starters, the Doll Devil wouldn't really be a problem, because even if you want to give the actual power of the Doll Devil an effective use over Sukuna, Sukuna's brain works so quickly that he is very easily able to interpret a situation, analyze the best possible course of action, and most importantly, not just let a random attack or person touch him at all. As soon as he sees a bunch of random dolls coming for him, he's going to slice them in two so they get away from him, or he's going to jump away and try to see what's happening. He's going to immediately see people getting turned into dolls by touch, and then just either Malevolent Shrine, since it's not a big deal to cast one out if he deems it necessary to cover that much area of effect. This also means that anyone trying to hit Sukuna with the Cursed Nail and get him attacked by the Cursed Devil is most likely going to fail. Sukuna's senses are heightened to the highest degree, and his perception isn't going to let something like that slip up. However, I guess if you really wanted to go into that discussion, it really is unclear if the Cursed Devil would be able to fully take Sukuna down. We have seen it fail against hybrids like Katana Man and Denji. However, they are also supposedly immortal, and it does kill them to the point where they do need more blood to be returned back to life. So it's unclear if it's just so much damage to Sukuna's body that it's supposed to kill him, and then he's just able to regenerate with reverse curse technique, or the curse is actual quote-unquote insta-death, and it just steals Sukuna's life entirely, because if that is the case, Sukuna might die. But we've also seen Sukuna withstand other aspects of attacks before, like Sukuna completely ignoring Mahito's idol transfiguration. So honestly, this could go either way. But the most important devil that we really see in this arc before getting into the primal fear is the Hell Devil. And funnily enough, the Hell Devil, despite showing up multiple times, being referenced a lot, and seemingly being one of the most powerful devils that requires the most amount of human sacrifice to act, whenever it does show up, it almost immediately gets one-shot. Now, that being said, the person that one-shots the Hell Devil is Black Chainsaw Man Pochita, so I think realistically, one of the most interesting things to do here would be to pivot and discuss how Ryomen Sukuna would compare to a character like Pochita. And you'll see why this is important later, especially when we're getting into characters like the Primal Fears and Makima. Because as it stands, Black Chainsaw Man Pochita has its biggest highlights as being able to outspeed Makima, one of the 4 horsemen who was able to keep up with one of the highest strength levels of devil like the Gun Devil. And to give you context, the Gun Devil was able to cross the country of Japan in mere seconds and also fire bullets even faster than that at potentially lightning speed. Pochita is not only outpacing that speed, but is able to throw his heart back from outer space into Japan in seconds. And while this is not the strongest form of Pochita that was supposedly able to take on all 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and win, this weakened state of Pochita is still able to outstat Makima and all the weapon hybrids at the same time. And in part 2 of Chainsaw Man, Pochita is able to react to, fight with, and even defeat for a good period of time Yoru, the War Devil, another horseman of the apocalypse. Pochita really only lost the fight and required more blood to continue once Yoru awakened the Gun Goddess, which was not only an additional portion of the Gun Devil that was hidden in the United States, she had to fulfill a contract for over 40,000 members of the NRA's thumbs to attack, and Pochita was, at the end of the day, able to survive this. While Black Chainsaw Man does not seem to be capable of fully killing a primal fear, it can still mortally wound them to the point of needing to regenerate, and Pochita's durability is pretty much on even with the primal fears, basically going death for death with the Aging Devil and now the War Devil. It's very easy to see how a character like Black Chainsaw Man Pochita can easily stand to destroy entire cities in split seconds like a lot of these other insanely powerful Chainsaw Man devils. While Ryomen Sukuna, for everything he's capable of, knowing that he can do Divine Furnace, what he was capable of doing in the Shibuya incident, and giving that his Heian era form was supposedly more powerful than anything we even saw in Shinjuku, while I would argue Sukuna is also able to wipe multiple towns to cities off of the map if he wanted to, I don't think his base attack would rip through the Hell Devil as easily as Pochita's does, as Sukuna really is only able to diminish cities to the ground when he unleashes attacks like Malevolent Shrine and even his most powerful attack, the Divine Furnace. So while a base dismantle might not cleave through the Hell Devil in a second, especially if we're gonna say it's the most durable devil so far and Sukuna couldn't instantly chop through Ishigori Ryu either, Sukuna is definitely very capable of dispatching a devil like the Hell Devil. He might just have to adjust his cleave's attack potency a little bit. However, with all of that being said, this is where Sukuna's raw brute force is going to begin to fail him, and where the powers of these primal fears are going to overwhelm Sukuna, not so much in stats. For example, considering Sukuna would basically be able to get all the way to this point in the series, when Sukuna gets thrown into hell and ends up facing the Darkness Devil, the very first appearance of a primal fear in Chainsaw Man, this is where we're going to see Sukuna have a problem. Even Pochita's massive strength is not able to kill and put down a primal fear for good. As the Falling Devil reiterates to us multiple times, the world of humanity has not created a weapon that is capable of deleting a primal fear forever. The primal fears are named so because not only do they represent some of the most universal fears of humankind, they are also the devils that have never been killed once and have survived thousands of years because their fear and negative energy surrounding them makes them divine and immaculate. We only find out now in Chainsaw Man Part 2, the first and only thing that humans were capable of using against the primal fears were nuclear weapons, which compared to anything that we have ever seen in Jujutsu Kaisen is far off from the level of power that we're able to produce, even on Ryomen Sukuna's level. Divine Furnace, while the most powerful attack in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, thanks to its ability to just outright combine with Sukuna's domain expansion and create an effect comparable to a thermobaric explosion, eviscerating to nearly vaporizing human life within. A nuclear weapon Heian is still pretty much higher tier than what Sukuna's Divine Furnace is producing. However, I wouldn't argue too much with you if you wanted to say that Divine Furnace Fire Arrow was Sukuna's one attack that would actually be enough to kill a Primal Fear, because we don't give him that opportunity. No matter what Sukuna does, he quite literally will never be able to defeat any of these devils that are coming up. In the Darkness Devil's very first appearance, the blanket of darkness that it casts is enough to cover almost all of hell itself. Even with just a fraction of the Darkness Devil's power, Santa Claus was essentially immortal as long as she was inside the darkness. Funnily enough, Denji was actually able to best Santa Claus by igniting himself in the flames and attacking the Darkness Devil Santa Claus fusion while he was on fire. However, the full power of the Darkness Devil might not be so easily bested, especially considering if there is that much darkness all over the area, the Divine Furnace, even if you give it its maximum range of 200 meters, might not be enough to light up the entire area. At best, if you're giving Sukuna the benefit of the doubt that as long as the actual Primal Fear darkness is inside light, he can do a final blow and finish the battle, that is Sukuna's most generous win condition. Everything that we have seen the Darkness Devil do, from just outright erasing people's limbs entirely to the point that sure, Sukuna can heal and regenerate, now we are getting to the point we had with Rize and Sukuna, where although having an insane amount of stamina compared to the Darkness Devil on his home turf, not even a world-cutting slash, even though you can consider it durability negation, the Darkness Devil is just made of disembodied limbs that are around the area, and the Darkness Devil can simply reform its body. So even if it was cut in half, giving it a soul level cut, there's no guarantee the Darkness Devil can't just regenerate and come back. This is overall a very bad matchup for Sukuna, and to be honest, even in the Gojo video, Darkness was one of Gojo's toughest battles, and that's just because not only is the actual attack potency required to slaughter a Primal Fear only at the upper highest echelon of these characters' ultimate attacks, the gimmick of the Darkness Devil is also 10 times harder for most people to work with unless you're readily prepared for it. A lot of people are gonna say that even Makima was able to wound the Darkness Devil, but if Makima had stayed in hell any longer and didn't get everyone out instantly, I don't think she would have survived the battle with darkness either. And speaking of disadvantages, another devil that Sukuna is gonna be at a complete disadvantage against is going to be the Gun Devil, because the Gun Devil has multiple actions going on while it is in motion. It has its passive abilities that are going to fire a headshot against every adult male that is in a 1 kilometer radius to it, which is 5 times the range of Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine. It also has another ability that is going to fire a shot into the heart of any person whose birthday matches the months that it hits. But while we don't know what Sukuna's birthday is, there's a pretty high chance he might be one of the people caught in this bullet storm, since it covers 9 out of the 12 months. Because again, this passive ability doesn't just target one person, it targets everyone within that kilometer range of the Gun Devil. For all of 1,000 meters, there's going to be a giant storm of stray bullets flying everywhere, and these bullets are made of the Gun Devil's flesh itself, the same Gun Devil that was able to eradicate entire cities across the entire world in a couple of minutes. So not only is the attack potency and raw destructive capability more than enough to deliver death blows to Ryoma and Sukuna, you might be able to argue Sukuna can survive the heart shots, as we've seen Sukuna survive without internal organs like the heart before. We know reverse curse technique comes strictly from the head and the stomach. So if Sukuna is caught by any stray bullets in those major areas, he can no longer heal and it is instant death. On top of the fact that even if Sukuna wants to run around with the Gun Devil's speed being some of the fastest, his bullets potentially being lightning speed, even if you want to give Sukuna his fastest speed interpretation to the point that the Gun Devil can continually move backwards, and no matter how much ground Sukuna gains, that 1,000 meter radius is always going to keep Sukuna out of attack distance, making him basically on defense the entire fight until he eventually gets hit by enough shots to die. Ironically enough, Sukuna with the 10 shadows would actually have a much better shot against the Gun Devil, because he would be able to hide in Bottomless Well, or also use things like domain amplification to keep himself alive long enough to have Maharaga adapt to the bullets and find a way to win. Because to be honest with you, full power Heian Sukuna without the 10 shadows is at a pretty bad counter counter matchup with the Gun Devil, to the point that the best possible condition we could give to Sukuna was using a mobile malevolent shrine to release a storm of slashes that would block off all of the bullets that was coming his way, that would give Sukuna enough time to get close to the Gun Devil and actually deliver a death blow himself. The argument isn't Sukuna can't kill the Gun Devil. The issue is, if he can't get through crazy abilities like the Darkness and Gun Devil's passive and active actions, it becomes nigh impossible to imagine a win condition for Sukuna. However, when you have high-level devils that don't have those insanely overpowered gimmicks, those wins do become a little bit more possible. The next opponent, even though Sukuna would have lost Darkness and Gun, let's say he skips those and continues the Gauntlet, if his next opponent was Makima, I actually think Sukuna would probably have the advantage in that matchup. Sukuna's whole entire mindset of himself, this strong beast that eats when he wants, does what he wants, and has no care or love in the world for anything other than himself. The King of Curses would not only never consider a character like Makima higher or more powerful than him to the point that her control ability would work on him. When you consider that Makima's most damaging abilities are the devils that she controls, and we've already discussed that Sukuna should at the very least be able to overpower things like the weapon hybrids, the zombie devil, the typhoon devil, it's very clear that Sukuna would have an advantage when it came to combat. The most deadly thing that Sukuna would have to watch out for would probably be Makima's force manipulation or her finger bang, by either pointing her finger gun at Sukuna and launching vicious attack blasts that could literally just poke holes through him, or just fire and rocket him into space like she does to Black Chainsaw Pochita. Those are things that he would definitely have to avoid. Sure, Makima is capable of keeping up with the Gun Devil's attacks and responding. However, you also have to consider that the Gun Devil was fighting someone like Makima from far off in the distance, whereas Sukuna has no reason to not go straight up close quarters and do all of his hand-to-hand martial arts expertise on a character like Makima that is not only going to suffer in that regard, but doesn't really have anything that's capable of damaging Sukuna on a deathly level like Sukuna will. Makima's main contributing factor in her battle is going to be the contract she has with the Japanese Prime Minister, which means every lethal wound he receives is transferred from her over to another Japanese citizen. Japan has a population of over 124 million people, which means Makima would quite literally have to be cut lethally 124 million times in order to stay dead. Because technically speaking, even though Sukuna could chop Makima into small little bits and eat her, just like Denji does, the theory is the loophole through the Prime Minister's contract was Denji saw eating Makima as a matter of love, as opposed to an actual matter of killing her. Whereas Sukuna, as described, does not see things as love, will always see eating Makima as a death. You could argue that if Makima has no possible way of returning, like for example, if Divine Furnace quite literally vaporizes her with no chance of regeneration, then the contract is just null and void because she quite literally can't come back. But I could definitely see people say that she would just be regenerated in a new body or something like that. I do see chances where this battle could just go on forever and there might be no actual winner. However, the victory is probably much more clear-cut when it comes to someone like the Falling Devil, because for all of the power that this primal fear has, being able to quite literally move the earth off of its axis and affect its gravitational pull for a lot of the citizens in multiple different countries all across the globe, her actual combat prowess is pretty low. She can lift up large pieces of debris and slam it down on people. She can even launch massive laser beams that can destroy upper echelon hell devils. I don't think this is even a conversation of whether the Falling Devil couldn't kill Sukuna. However, the Falling Devil's personality as a devil is much less combat oriented. She is a chef first and foremost and likes to prepare food, because not for nothing, her other main gimmick of the mental fall, in which she completely puts people in delusions to where they go through their most traumatic, terrifying moments to where they want to just die, as addressed before, with Sukuna not having any traumatic moments, then the mental aspect of that game doesn't even work. And on top of this, we have even seen Sukuna, as we've talked about before, endure attacks like Idle Transfiguration, and then at that point, hand-to-hand, Sukuna versus the Falling Devil. And even if you want to say it would be one of the most hard-earned fights that he gets, if we're giving Divine Furnace the capability of killing a primal fear, I think there's much more likeliness of Sukuna landing that fire arrow than the Falling Devil catching Sukuna off guard regard if we're going to compare their battle intelligence and expertise. However, these last two candidates are most likely going to be guaranteed losses for Sukuna. For one, the Aging Devil, despite also following in the Falling Devil's footsteps, not really being a combat-oriented primal fear, the Aging Devil's abilities are just not going to be beaten by anything Sukuna has. Not only does Sukuna have nothing to deal with the overall effects of aging to the point where he could just become an old man and just keel over and die, unlike the Falling Devil, who would have to meet Sukuna in battle, the Aging Devil can just teleport Sukuna away into the Aging Realm, and Sukuna, with no way of dimensional travel, will be stuck in the Aging Realm forever. And even though he can definitely become the Lord of the Aging Realm and will have plenty of tree people to rule for all eternity, that is definitely not a win in my book. And once again, this is another battle where Meguna would probably do better due to having Maharaga to adapt to aging and probably be able to find some win condition out of it. And last but not least, you have Yoru the War Devil, who is basically just the Makima battle but on steroids. Yoru has the exact same contract that results in all lethal wounds going into other people in the state of California. She also has all of the power of the Nuclear War Devil and other massively powerful devils like the Accident Devil, among other things, and is easily able to keep up with Black Chainsaw Man Pochita on a level much more equal compared to Makima, which tells me if we have a Yoru that is having a similar level of immortality that was almost capable of stalemating Sukuna when it came to fighting Makima, Yoru has everything that Makima was lacking. When it comes to raw stats, Sukuna is always going to win in that regard. However, when you have weird, overcomplicated gimmicks like some of these primal fears do have, it becomes that much harder for the King of Curses to win. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments, and don't forget to check out the Gojo video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't be scared to check out the second channel for some more weekly manga content, or the third channel for some more gaming stuff, guys. Love you all. Have a good one.